Okay, so it is 4:31, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started. My name is Alexia Kemmerling. I am the Community Engagement Coordinator at Disability Rights Ohio. A visual description of me is that I'm a white woman in my early 20s. I have shoulder-length blonde hair. I'm wearing a black sweater, and behind me is a wood-paneled door. My pronouns are she, her. As per usual, I'm going to start off with some housekeeping items. We have captions provided by Denise today. To view those, you can click the CC button in your bottom toolbar. If you're not seeing that, you can click more, and then you should be able to click show captions. If you prefer to view the captions in an external browser, you can click on the link that I just put in the chat. We are recording today's webinar, and depending on how our discussion goes, it will either be available on our DRO budget page, or I can email it directly to you. We also have ASL interpretations provided by Krista today. I have her spotlighted, but if you can't see her for any reason, please just send me a message. We are currently in the webinar format, so all participants are muted and your video is off. You can ask questions by using the chat or Q&A feature. If it's more accessible to you to ask your question out loud, you can use the raise hand feature, and then I will give you the availability to unmute. All right. So we have a lot on the agenda today. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of what we're going to do. First, I'm going to share just an advocacy story update from Disability Rights Ohio. And then I'll turn it over to Jordan, who is going to give updates about what happened at the State House regarding the budget process this week. There were a couple of key hearings that he'll talk about. And then he's also going to share some key dates that are coming up in March where people might want to consider testifying. So definitely stick around for that important information. Don't worry about writing it all down. We will send it out via email as well. And then Alicia, who is a consultant for Disability Rights Ohio, is going to share some advocacy updates and then some advice on what to do between now and testimony dates. Okay, I see, Joy, you have your hand raised. Let me give you the, oh, it just went away, but I'm going to give you the ability to unmute if you would like to ask your question.
That was a mistake. I apologize.
No worries, man. I was kind of excited. I was like, a question already. That's okay. Okay, so just jumping right in. If you have been involved with advocacy and DRO, you probably already know that we've been collecting stories about the direct care crisis for the past year. And we've been using the hashtag everyone deserves care. Well, just today, we launched our story map, which I will share my screen and show. This shows all of the stories from around Ohio, and the effect of it is really to capture, all the legislative districts that these folks are in, to show the General Assembly that there are people in their district and that this is really a statewide issue. So today we released it to the public. Next week, we're going to be sending it to each of the representatives and senators who have constituents who shared a story. And if you haven't shared your story via this outlet, but you would like to, there's definitely still time, and I will give you information on that. But first, I just want to show what our map looks like. So This is the interactive version. We also have an accessible PDF version, but this shows a map of Ohio with different plot points all around the state. And on the right side, it says Disability Rights Ohio, Across Ohio, Direct Care Crisis. And then you can click on each of the little plot point markers, and it will show the person in that area's story, as well as who the representative is and who their senator is. So this one I just clicked on is House District 23 and Senate District 16. And it's a story written about Kevin and Carolyn, and their perspective is specifically about the nursing shortage. And you can kind of continue to click through those. So it's pretty neat to click around with and just learn all of these different perspectives and how people are impacted. So we just wanted to share that with you all. I'm coming back to the screen now. And I will put in the chat a couple of links. So if you would like to share your story in a written format, either you wrote your story and you want to share it, or you want to work collaboratively with a DRO employee to help you write your story, you can use the SurveyMonkey link that I'm putting in the chat. We are also working on another format for sharing stories, which is through video and audio format. You're able to directly respond to questions, and we'll post the first one of those in a few days. But we have 3 video collectors that I'll put in the chat as well. One is specifically questions about the nursing crisis shortage. One is specifically about direct care workers. And then one is if there are any caregivers or providers who want to share their story. It's a really easy tool. You can do it on your phone or your computer. You don't need to download anything. It just will ask you a question and then you can record a short response. So feel free to play around with those if you would like to as well. Now in continuing onward, it's really key to be making sure that our stories and all the perspectives are making it to the General Assembly. Okay. Kyle Moore, I've given you permission to unmute if you would like to ask your question. It looks like you are unmuted, but we cannot hear you. Okay, well, we will come back to you if you are able to type your question or figure out your audio, but we will definitely come back to you. All right, so that was just a little update on stories. I am going to now turn it over for Jordan for the part everyone really tuned in for, which is policy updates.
Thank you, Alexia. That's false. No one shows up to these for me. They all show up here for Alicia and Alexia. My name is Jordan. I am the policy director at Disability Rights Ohio. I am white male in the last couple of months of my 20s. This is the same joke I use every week, so I hope that doesn't get too old for anyone. I'm wearing a plaid shirt with a blurred background. So this week there was testimony in the subcommittee from the Director of Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities, which is Ohio's vocational rehabilitation agency in the state. So they do things like employment services for disabled Ohioans, so helping them obtain and retain employment in the state. Very excited about this particular budget because this is the first time in I think about 15 years that they will be pulling their full federal match. So for every dollar that the state puts up for VR services, we draw about $3.70 or so. So almost $4 from the federal government for VR services. Historically, over the past 15 or so years, we have not pulled the entire federal match. So there's roughly about $150 million for the state to pull from the federal government. This past fiscal year, we pulled about 140 million. So we were shy about $10 million in VR funding. So by the end of the biennium, so by 2025, we should be pulling the entirety of our federal match. And for some people like me, who is weird, this is a very exciting thing to see from the state budget, as this is something we have been advocating for quite a few years now. So it's exciting to see that this will be occurring. As a general overview, the agency is increasing its total budget about 7.3% in 2024 and 8.1% in 2025. For general revenue fund, that's 37% and 19% for 2024 and then 2025. For VR funding specifically, it's increased to $175 million in 24 and $195 million in 25. And this is going to help us pull the entire federal match. One area of highlight is the services and community centers for the deaf, which has been increased to $1.3 million, which will be the same amount for each year of the biennium. This is an increase of 33%. I note this because there's been a lot of activity from the deafblind community, and this new funding is a great opportunity for advocacy around those dollars to be used specifically for things like deafblind interpreting and services. Another big area that was pointed out by the director is Accessible Ohio. This initiative is a new line item of $500,000, which will be used to consult with local governments, attractions and venues to identify barriers and goals and establish goals for accessibility. The other big area of highlight for us, particularly at Disability Rights Ohio, is the area of transition services. So helping students with disabilities transition out of school and into either the workplace or college and into careers. Specifically, the Ohio Transition Support Partnership, which is a partnership with the Ohio Department of Education, is increasing its funding from $5.5 million in 2024 to $6.5 in 2025. And this will help hire dedicated VR counselors who work directly within the school districts to help students get connected to the path after high school. So we're very excited about that new initiative, or not new initiative, about enhancing that initiative. The other big highlight for us, as you all know, DRO has been working with the Ohio 14C Task Force on eliminating subminimum wage in the state of Ohio. And this budget appropriates an amount of money to help transition people out of subminimum wage. This new funding is $9 million. This comes from the federal government. It's a 5-year grant. So this will be through September of 2027 to help transition individuals out of subminimum wage. I think the goal is around 1,500 people will be transitioned with this grant. And the transition will be to competitive integrated employment. The last highlight I want to discuss is independent living. So there is a new line item created which is the Independent Living Projects line item, which will be $250,000 each year of the biennium. And this is aimed to educate the public regarding independent living services and establish to clearly define the appropriation intended to support the community centers for the deaf. So that is all from Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities Red Book. As I mentioned before, we are still waiting for multiple Red Books from agencies to be released. However, we did hear also during testimony the Department of Aging's director testify, and there were a lot of indications about wage increases from the director and a lot of questions from committee members about increasing those wages. So we continue to hear throughout testimony over and over and over again, a reiteration of the direct care workforce crisis. So it is good to know that everyone is continuing to advocate to their legislators. Legislators actually even indicated the conversations that they were having the day before during the Olmsted Advocacy Day. So kudos to all of the advocates who are continuing to educate the legislature on the need for these increased wages. The last thing I want to talk about before I turn it over to Alicia is some important dates to just keep in mind. So the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services and the Department of Developmental Disabilities will both be testifying in the finance hearing on March 9th. It's a Thursday. The directors will be testifying. There's no public testimony slated for that particular day. However, the 2 days prior, so Tuesday the 7th and Wednesday the 8th, public testimony is being opened up. The next week, so the week of March 13th, the new Department of Children and Youth will have testimony on Tuesday the 14th, the Department of Health on March 15th, Wednesday, and then the Department of Medicaid on Thursday, March 16th. And each of those days is also open for public testimony. Thank you, Alexia, just sent me a little note. So to submit testimony, what you need to do is send in a written copy of the testimony that you're planning to provide to the chair. So the chair of the subcommittee is Representative Sarah Carruthers, and we'll make sure that everyone has the information on her office so you can submit that testimony. It has to be submitted 24 hours prior to the hearing. And then you can also just show up and give testimony, but they will ask you to send in a written version of your testimony. You also need to fill out a witness slip as well, which just asks for your name, some identifying information, and what you'll be discussing. You also send that to the chair's office as well. And we'll make sure to get all of this information out to you so that it's easier for you to submit your testimony. DRO is most likely going to be submitting testimony the week of the 14th. However, there is an additional opportunity the following week. So March 21st, Tuesday, Wednesday, the 22nd, and Thursday, the 23rd. Every one of those days is a public testimony day. So you can also submit testimony that week as well if you want to wait until after all the directors have testified before you give your testimony. Like I said, we are still waiting on some additional red books, and we will make sure to get you all of that information once it comes out. And we'll do a similar kind of thing as I did today, where we just update you and summarize what is all in each of those red books. So that is all from my update today. I will now turn it over to Alicia to talk about some cool updates, specifically what Olmsted has been doing.
Before we switch gears, this is Alexia. Do we want to check and see if there's any questions on your portion, Jordan?
Sorry, I lost my mouse. Yes, that sounds great.
Jordan tried to get away without answering any questions. Maybe there won't be any, but does anyone have any questions on OOD's red book? So that's the more detailed information about the opportunities for Ohioans with disabilities budget, or about the hearings that happened this week. All right, Melody, you should be able to unmute.
Yeah. Is there a way to get a copy of OOD's red book? Is it like on the web or something? Hello?
Sorry, I keep losing my mouse. A copy of the red book, yes, we can put a link to the red book in the chat. Also, I was just reading, which is another reason I was distracted. Jeremiah from DOED put in the Q&A that the director is actually testifying on the 14th, not the 9th, as is slated in the original schedule. So thank you, Jeremiah, for that update.
And what I get confused about this, so I'm probably gonna sound stupid, but what exactly are we covering in this upcoming testimony? Is it just about wages, or what all topics are we submitting testimony on?
That is a great question. You can submit testimony on any topic you want pertaining to health and human services. So for instance, so far we've heard from OOD, we've heard from the Department of Aging, we've heard from several departments that I can't think of right now. But however, so for instance, like I mentioned today, some of the things of highlight from OOD's budget, you can mention any of those in your testimony. We, Disability Rights Ohio, are going to be hyper focused on the direct care workforce wages. However, we're waiting to for the directors of the agencies to testify before we submit testimony. Also regarding the wages. So that's why we're waiting until that week of the 14th to submit our testimony. So there's enough time for the directors to talk about the proposal for increased wages in the budget. So you can focus on whatever you'd like. However, we will be putting together some talking points specifically around the direct care workforce crisis. They are geared specifically to what DRO is prioritizing around wages. So you're happy to take those. I know Olmsted has a lot of talking points around the direct care workforce crisis. And if you need any help putting together testimony, we can definitely help with getting you. We have some like mock testimony builders that we can help with putting together testimony for you all as well. I apologize, Melody, that I went on for so long to answer your question, but I hope I answered it.
Yeah, I'll follow up if I need clarification.
Awesome, thank you, Melody. And then Mark, you should be able to unmute now as well.
How do I do? Am I unmuted?
You got it.
Okay, Jordan, real quick, just remind me that 5-year grant through 2027 for helping transition. How many folks did they target in the red book? I missed that number.
I don't know if there was a number in the red book. The number, let me see, was from the blue book.
Oh, thank you.
The blue book says 1,450 individuals.
Thank you. I didn't, yeah, thank you. That's why I missed it. Okay, if there's time at the end, I have a couple other budget areas I wouldn't mind people to focus on, but I'll hush up now until we get through everything else.
Perfect. Thanks, Mark.
All right, we will come back to you for sure, Mark. Thank you. All right, all you, Alicia.
Hi, my name is Alicia Hopkins. I'm a white woman with brown hair, and I have on a red hoodie with green pants on, and I have white walls behind me. Thank you for having me today. So I had the opportunity this week to be a part of the advocacy day with Ohio Homestead Task Force. We had 10 people that were in person, and some people as well on Zoom. But our Homestead Task Force, we met with 31 different legislators on Wednesday, and a lot of us, like what I seem to be hearing from different advocates, is that was a really good day, and a lot of people felt heard about the care crisis. I think it was a really great opportunity. I can tell you though, in the meetings that I was in, it seemed that we had a lot of legislators that were really on our side. Surprisingly, like it's the first time I've really seen from both sides, Republican and Democrat, about the care crisis. Like they just seen them like wanting to increase the wages. So this is a really good sign for us, but we have to still keep the pressure on them, and to make sure that this is followed through with, and and their colleagues vote and everything. So it's really, really important that people continue to share their stories, to write letters and postcards, whatever you can do to keep like the pressure on. It's super important. I think that one of the biggest things is like getting to know your legislator on like a personal side and letting them hear your story. When I advocate and stuff, I take my art and everything, and that seems to like it kind of makes it a memorable experience for me. And that's what I did when I was in Columbus. But we all have something that I think that we can do to like make our story stick with them. So when they go to vote, they have those stories. So there's like lots of opportunities, as like Alexia mentioned, the vocal video, and being a part of the testimony process, as Jordan was sharing and everything. But the Olmsted thing, I think it really had a great impact, and it was really good to like have them see us in person, but also see people on Zoom and everything. And it's we're just trying to figure out like the next steps at this point, what to do next. But I think we've really made an impact. And I mean, I've been seeing stuff on social media from different representatives posting and talking about it. So it's been really, really a good thing. Does anyone have any questions or anything they want to share about that part of it? Do we have any questions, Alexia, or anyone?
I don't see any. I know, just want to highlight Katie Watson, who's on the call, also had meetings earlier this week, with legislators, and she put in the chat her Zoom meetings went really well talking with them. So thank you to everyone who's been meeting and educating and sharing your stories. We'll definitely ask you to continue. Go ahead.
I was gonna say and people can still get involved with Olmsted's advocacy. Every other Friday, there is a DS drug support work crisis advocacy group. On Mondays, 2:30, usually we have a nursing crisis meeting. This week it's at 2:30 on Tuesday, for people that are interested. But we're really working on a lot of advocacy there still, behind the scenes, but there's many ways that people can still get involved in the advocacy. And So I just wanted to share that as well.
I have a question. This is Melanie. Only because I've never actually had the nerve to ask this, but I'm gonna go ahead and do this. When people meet with the legislators, I know that they tell those stories. But is anybody telling the story about the people who don't have care but will need it?
Absolutely. That's a great point, Melody, and Alicia might speak to that as well, but I know a lot of the area agencies on aging have been using talking points around that. Disability is the only minority group that anyone can join at any time, and also many older adults need care, and everyone is aging. So I think that's a really important point, and you can feel free to use that as a talking point in your own meetings and testimony too, Melody. I think that's really important.
I will
Well,
say,
I've never done that because I'm not sure how to testify. So I'm concerned that I'm gonna undo anything that people are accomplishing. So I've never had like a positive experience in giving testimony. Because I had thought about doing the 22nd, but I was afraid to do it because I don't really know how to do it. But I have actually should be benefiting from provider services, but with the crisis, I don't need it like other people. So I've been choosing to not pursue it. Also because I don't have any funding to pay for it anyway, and that's one of my issues with the Affordable Care website, whatever it's called, because when I try to go on and look for other kinds of insurance, I'm automatically directed, only given the choice of Medicaid, and I don't qualify for Medicaid because of I've aged out of the Medicaid buy-in, so I don't really have any funding options for provider services.
Melody, I would like to say this though, many counties, many of the area on agings have like levies per county that is also giving people assistance. And I will say this, that, many of the people advocating like on the area on aging side, I just had an interview yesterday with Southwest Area on Aging, and a lot of their advocacy is geared towards people that don't even qualify for Medicaid services. And so I think that there is a lot of people who are really speaking up about that side of it, that they're speaking about it on the Medicaid side, but they're also speaking up on it on people that don't qualify, because there's levies like per county that like gives funding for the programs for people that that may not qualify. So I'm gonna say that the advocacy that I'm seeing on the aging side is geared towards people that don't qualify for Medicaid, but also those that do. But then there's also advocacy for people that don't have care yet, that may need it in the future. I see a lot of the advocacy for the aging baby boomers, and they've been talking about how Ohio is 6th in the most elderly population. So there's like that whole advocacy for people who want to age in place as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Melody. And I definitely hear you that testifying takes a lot of effort and energy, and don't feel pressured if you don't feel like that's the best advocacy path for you. There's a lot of ways that you can make your voice heard, but also don't feel like your story doesn't matter, because I feel like the few minutes you just spoke there could probably be a testimony. Like you are someone who could really benefit from care, it sounds like, and you're having be put in the position to choose not to, because you're more concerned about others who may need it in more severe ways. And I think that's a really powerful perspective. So don't discount your perspective, Melody.
I also wanted to say too, it's really important for people to know that you don't have to go to Columbus and testify there, that you can also just do written testimony as well.
Absolutely. And I wanted to call out 2 things that were in the chat. Maria Matzek said the Legislative Advocacy Day was great. And then Jennifer Kachera said that all the legislators she met with were really happy that we were talking about parity and wage increases. So parity being equal funding across all the systems that employ direct care.
I can concur that too as well. Many of the 2 out of the 3 legislators I was with agreed as well that there, was excited that there was parity being asked for. So
Really great. Mark, I want to toss it back to you. I don't see any other questions, and you had a couple budget points to bring up.
Thank you. And if I'm being redundant, I missed last week. So if you guys covered this and you need to, just put your hand up and cut me off. By the way, since you have to listen to me, I guess I should be a good boy. I'm nowhere near my birthday, but I'm about 65 and I've got a lot of gray in my beard and not much hair left on top. How about that? And I'm a white guy. So how about that for a good rundown? A lot of gray in my beard. Two quick things. One, as I mentioned in a previous discussion, I've done this for a long time and even I miss stuff. So there's no such thing as a wrong question or a bad question or a dumb question. I mean, I missed that figure in the blue book and I needed Jordan to help me find that. So don't ever worry about making a mistake. In fact, some of the best testimony I've ever seen is from people who spoke from the heart and made a few mistakes while they were doing the testimony. So don't ever worry about that. Legislators will not, if you're a person with a disability who's testifying from their own experience, they may ask you hard questions, but if you don't know the answer, you just say, I don't know the answer. And they're never going to be upset about that. So I really appreciate all the honesty and it's good stuff. Just a couple quick things. You folks may know that for a while, the DD Council funded an advocacy task force that was working on language so that people with developmental disabilities could be appointed to all the county boards of DD in Ohio. And there is language in DODD's introduced budget that a person with a disability, a person with DD should be appointed to those county boards. The current language in the Ohio law says a person with a disability or a parent or a guardian. And many times the counties have defaulted to parents and guardians. The appointments to the county boards come both from the county commissioners and the probate judges. And so there's been a lot of outreach from that advocacy task force when the funding for it ran out from DD Council, but that group is still meeting. And that language is in the introduced version of the Department of Developmental Disabilities budget. And my understanding is there's pretty significant support for it. So I was really pleased with that because that came from a lot of work from folks with disabilities really advocating, and that draft language got in there. And so I'm not hearing anything about, and in fact, I believe there's even support from the County Board Association. I believe so, and many other groups. So I don't think there's any opposition, but I would keep an eye on that, as I may say to all my other esteemed colleagues on this particular discussion. You never know what's going to happen through the budget process, and you have to keep an eye on things, and you all already know that. But I just wanted to throw that out. I'm really quite excited that even though this doesn't particularly focus on money, which, as we all know, follow the money, that kind of tells you where budget priorities are. Sometimes language is very, very interesting. And also here's an off the wall thing that I actually was reading through the bill. Shows you what I do for fun. I was actually reading through the bill and I found a spot where for those of us who use handicap parking placards, you know, the thing you hang from your rear view mirror, they call that a placard. Don't ask me why they call it a placard, but that's the term. Generally, you have to renew that every I believe, is it 5 years or 4? I think it's 5. 5 years. There's language in this budget where you can get a permanent placard if your disability is going to be permanent. And I don't know how I stumbled across that, but I did. And instead of the $5 for the 5-year placard, it's $15, but it's a permanent placard until such time you don't need it anymore. You have to turn it back in. Or of course, you know, God forgive me, if you pass away, you're supposed to turn it back in. I'm glad they're doing a permanent. The only thing I would just say to you folks is, you know, if people do not need it anymore, they really need to turn it back in. So we make sure that this continues. But I was kind of thrilled to see a permanent placard language in there for those of us who've worked on handicap parking for the last decades and decades. We'll just do it that way. So there's just 2 things I wanted to throw out in addition to all the other great information you guys put out.
Mark, this is Melody. Do you know how I could get in touch with that task force?
Yes, I know Renee Wood is still working on that. You could also just the easiest way might be to call the DD Council and they could give you emails. Tim Tobin was helping with that, but the easiest way would just, you know, look up the DD Council, call them. I should remember the number off by heart, but if I give it to you, I'll probably screw it up. Just look up the DD Council and call them, and they'll give you a couple people to contact with that task force. Is that an okay way to do that?
No,
I
when
can-
you say council, do you mean the board or are you talking about something different?
Melody, I can connect you to those
That'd
folks.
be great. Well,
Yeah.
because I'm really interested, because I would love to get in and push for that, because I am even though I don't receive services, I am considered a person with a developmental disability, and I'd like to put my push in.
And I'm
Yeah.
a person with a developmental disability too, and I don't receive services. So I'm with you.
Sometimes they forget that not all people with developmental disabilities doesn't show up in language or intellect.
Yes, I hear you. But these folks are going to take care of you. But I'm sorry, I was talking about the Ohio Developmental Disabilities Council. I was talking about the council.
Yeah, okay. Well,
So,
Alexis is gonna connect me with. Thank you for the information.
and forgive me, one of my many foibles is I always talk too fast.
Well, that's okay too. I mean, if Jordan can forget to talk, you can talk too fast.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much, Mark. I did not know about the placard piece. That's really neat and it makes sense. I'm glad they're doing that. Make it.
And they're making some other changes to handicap parking in the transportation budget. One of it, they're increasing, I didn't read this, it just came across my desk. They're increasing the fines and they're doing a couple other things, but I'm a little behind. I didn't read the transportation budget. I've been too busy with the biennial budget. So you may want to take a quick peek at the transportation budget. They're making some changes to handicap parking in there, but it has more to do with increasing the fines and letting officers, you know, just put tickets on windshields and things like that. It was more in the enforcement arena, I think, but I have to go back and read the language.
Very interesting. Yeah, so that's, to your point, Melody, there are a lot of different things that are in the budget that you might be interested in advocating on. So thank you guys so much for sharing. Was there anyone else? I know we have about 15 minutes left. Any other participants want to talk about issues that they're particularly interested in the budget? Questions, concerns, positive things, sharing upcoming advocacy? All right, well, just to give you a heads up of what's coming from DRO next week, we will share some of those key dates in March that we mentioned. We also plan to organize a more informal meeting for folks to talk about and work on testimony writing, if anyone needs support with that. Or has any questions about logistics.
Oh, Alexia, I forgot something.
Go for it, Mark.
Next Wednesday, did you guys already say this? I'm sorry, I'm doing three things at once. Next Wednesday is DD Awareness Day in the State House. Did we talk about that?
We did not talk about that.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing that up. You want to cover
And
it?
they've already filled up the in-person slots for DD Awareness Day, but it's going to be broadcast online. So you'll be able to listen to all the speakers. They start the registration down the State House at 8:30, but the speakers start at 10 o'clock. And so you'll be able to go online through the Ohio channel. And I think it's, is it ohiochannel.org, Jordan? I think it's actually .org, I think. But if you just Google the Ohio channel and go in and look at it, there'll be a part that says, Governor, House, Senate, Supreme Court. And then there's usually a piece that'll tell you what's going on. I believe that's going to be on the Ohio channel. It may be on other venues, but I think it's on the Ohio channel. And you can watch the speakers at home, and that kind of gives you a feeling about what they're going to be talking about. Those folks are all going to be, and me too, are all going to be meeting with their legislators after the speakers. So for March the 1st, get on the Ohio channel and listen to the speakers, usually from 10 to 12, from 10 to noon on March 1st, Wednesday.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder, Mark. I can't believe next week is March. That is wild. Jennifer asked a question for you, Mark. Is the wording in the budget handicap placard to accessible parking or the accessible? Oh, no, it's not a question. I'm sorry, Jennifer. I read it too quickly. She's sharing information. They are also changing the wording from handicap parking to accessible parking. Very cool.
Thank you. That's in the transportation budget too, and I forgot to say that. You folks are so much on the ball more than I am today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Jennifer. That's really exciting.
Well, it's about time.
Agreed.
And I'll beg your pardon one last time. We used handicap parking for so many years. I know the terminology is not really correct anymore, but it's hard for me to change it in my head because we used it for so many decades to get people to understand that I continue to make that error, and it's hard for me. So accessible parking is what we should be saying, but I have a hard time getting that old term out of my head.
Well, you got a couple months until the budget's passed to get with it, Mark.
Yeah, you guys can keep nudging me. I always take correction as long as it's in the proper spirit. I hope. So you keep correcting me, and I'll start saying accessible parking.
All right, Jennifer and I will get on that for you.
Thank you.
Well, there's one local issue. I may be reaching out to get some help on resolving it. I don't know if any of the rest of you live in the city of Dayton, Ohio, but they will not allow me to have a reserved space in front of my house because I do not own a vehicle. And I constantly struggle trying to have a space for a paratransit bus. So I either need to figure out how to work around that, or I need to put something in place where there's a separate kind of reservation thing to put in front of the house for paratransit buses. And the really thing that really makes me upset is once they give out that reserved spot, they never take the sign down. So even if the person no longer drives, they still get to keep the reserved sign. And I think it should be when you no longer drive, it should be taken back.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Melody. Keep us updated on how your advocacy around that goes. All right. Anyone else want to share budget takeaways?
I wanted to say something about the oversight committee. I mean, so Olmsted Task Force asked for an oversight committee as part of their advocacy for like transparency with like provider pay and everything. And I think that a lot of the legislators really were interested in that idea. And so I really am grateful. And I think that it would be a really great thing. I'm hoping that it'll get included in the budget. Because right now, we're dealing with a lot of providers that are struggling to get paid and everything. And so I hope that, the oversight committee, I don't know if anyone else felt the same way with the asks from Olmsted, the advocacy day, but I think it's really important to get some kind of oversight and transparency committee for provider wages and stuff. And for I don't know. That's basically what I wanted to say. Thanks.
All right, well, we have 5 minutes left still. If anyone is holding out their wisdom until the very end, now is your chance.
I just checked on the Ohio channel. It'll actually come up under Ohio channel live, and they are already showing for the March 1st, the time and everything. So it should be really easy to find. And sometimes I actually get Ohio channel on my TV. So I'll check there first. I'm hoping that they're gonna do captions on the live stream.
I'm glad to hear it's already posted. Melody, Ohio channel does not typically have captions, but I can show you a way to get them. And also, I feel like I remember last year they did have captioning at DD Day. I feel like I remember that.
Yes, they had captioning.
Yeah, it's usually like projected on a screen next to the speaker. But Melanie, I'll touch base with you next week and I'll show you what I do to get captions on Ohio channel.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Mhm. All right, well, once again, thank you all for joining us at the very end of the day on a Friday to talk about policy. We are very glad that you're all here, and all the advocacy you're doing is so appreciated. Please stay in touch with us and keep your eye out for some more information next week about key dates.
Well, you guys are so great that I actually am sharing a bit of my vacation with you because advocacy does not take a vacation.
Ah, Melody, this is why you're such a long-term advocate. You're on vacation and you're still tuning in and doing work. You know, I hope you have some relaxing time too, but thank you for doing that. But vacations are still good.
Yes, yeah, I've been on vacation most of the week. I was on a training that Maria and the IL centers did yesterday. And then I wanted to do today because it's so important to stay in the loop.
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate that. And we appreciate all of you. And we hope you have a great weekend.